of bringing together academia, research, and industry to help the state strive to the new technology frontiers. The government of Kerala recognizes the important role of information technology sector as a key element for Kerala's growth. The government has proactively assisted the growth of this sector and has been committed to continued investment in infrastructure, enhancing Kerala's digital connectivity and networking, undertaking initiatives to upgrade the quality of skilled human resources from Kerala, and reaching out to investors from different parts of India and internationally to invest in the state. With immense pleasure, on behalf of Kerala State Planning Board, we would like to welcome each one of you to the thematic session on hardware. Now, for beginning the session, I would like to welcome Professor T. Jayaraman, Member, Kerala State Planning Board, for the welcome address. Professor T. Jayaraman is Senior Fellow at MS Swaminathan Research Foundation. He previously served as the chairperson of Center for Climate Change and Sustainability Studies, School of Habitat Studies, and School of Research Methodology at Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. He is in charge of energy, information technology, scientific services and research, and climate change and disaster management in Kerala State Planning Board. So, please.
Uh, uh, Good morning to all the participants who have responded to our invitation. May I begin by particularly warmly welcoming our dignitaries who are going to be the panelists for this morning's session and will lead the discussion. May I also warmly welcome Secretary, Department of Information Technology, Government of Kerala, and the number of officials who are joining in. May I also welcome all other participants, both from industry and from academia, and also from the general public who are interested in the proceedings of this session. What do we look forward to from this conference? It is well known and amply written about at the time of the pandemic, and we are still going through that phase of Kerala's achievements in public action. Kerala's response to the demand of social welfare, human development, and most recently in disaster management have set new standards and raised the bar on such performance by governments not only in the country but elsewhere. But as we come out of these disasters, as we build and look forward to the future, we realize that a sustainable future is not possible without tremendous growth that is still to come in economic productivity, in the modernization of Kerala's production sectors, and in the provision of high-value employment, livelihoods, and laying the foundation for the progress of social welfare in the state. In this process of moving forward, modernizing the economy and its productive capacities, it would be a truism to say that IT has a central role to play. So I will not belabor this somewhat obvious point to this distinguished audience and those interested. But I would like to point out that while a lot of attention has been paid to the way in which information technology replaces or enhances the cognitive skills of human beings, very perhaps less attention is paid, especially in our country and in the state of Kerala, that this kind of development, which we broadly call software, requires a material basis. in hardware, in the development of products, in the development of machinery, equipment, and the infrastructure that is required for the growth of information technology. India has not been among the global leaders, though there are very promising shoots that we see all over. The same applies to Kerala. So we look forward to this session with a particular interest for your guidance, for your ideas, for your inputs on how the material physical basis of the IT industry can be developed in this state. We are here to listen and learn, and we look forward to your forward looking, at the same time, your open and frank suggestions of what it will take for us to get Kerala up there, not only in terms of developing software, but also the manufacturing and physical infrastructure basis of the IT industry. With these words, may I express once again my great pleasure at the presence of one and all here, and let us move forward. I look forward to the session. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Let me now invite the Additional Secretary, Department of Electronics and Information Technology, Sri Muhammad Bhai Safirullah, IAS, for the opening remarks. Sir has previously served as the Director of State IT Mission, Deputy Secretary of IT Department, and Project Director of eHealth Kerala. He was instrumental in bringing many novel initiatives in redefining various projects in the IT and digital governance space of Kerala. He has also served as Sub-Collector of Idiki, is Assistant Collector of Palakkad, and Collector of Ernakulam. Please, sir.
Esteemed panelists, members of the State Planning Board, and viewers, warm good morning. At the outset, I would like to thank the State Planning Board for the opportunity to share a few thoughts today. It gives me great pleasure to offer opening remarks in the second thematic session on information technology, dealing with the area of hardware, which experts from across the world will be discussing today. Kerala has come a long way in the area of information technology, particularly in the domain of software, skilling, and training. However, in my view, our success in the area of hardware has shown mixed results. We have shown promise in certain areas through the success of private industry in domains which are one of the best in the world, in healthcare, in other areas of electronics. We have some of them represented in the panel today. Experts from across the industry are there. And later in the discussion, we'll also, I believe, see the areas which offer promise and the areas where we have actually failed also, so that we can learn from our failures. The state PSU of Keltron, which is under the Industries Department, has built some centers of excellence in areas and even makes products for the defense industry in our country. The hardware mission formed under Electronics and IT Department had in 2017-18 identified areas where Kerala could develop expertise, leading to a lot of jobs in the skilled category. I'm sure the panel will discuss them in detail. Today, I would like to highlight 3 points in the area of hardware. One is designing an ecosystem in the areas of emerging technologies, for example, Internet of Things. For example, in the chip designing companies in Bangalore, many Kerala-based companies and many Keralites provide high-end skilled manpower. This is an area I feel we can tap into and develop expertise. The second area is in utilizing the benefits of Atmanirbhar Bharat program of Government of India and also supported by Government of Kerala. For example, in areas of server design and manufacturing of laptops, etc., we find that there is a lot of potential for developing local players and synergizing our presence in the supply chain link. There is a move to favor the local companies, that is the companies which manufacture in our country, As we see recently, after the Atmanirbhar project, even the government of Kerala has said in areas where more than 50% of production is done by the local industries, up to 50% of the value of tender can be given. These sort of processes and policies are getting developed across our country. The third area I would like to highlight is about the linking the success areas, particularly in startup and setting the entire supply chain end to end. For example, we have the Maker Village, which is which has the biggest hardware incubator in our country. We have the Technology Innovation Zone, which is going to be completed in the year 2021, which will make it the biggest, the startup complex in the entire country. We have the areas like Kerala Blockchain Academy, which is producing the largest number of blockchain experts in our country. So we have these setups like hardware incubators, the innovation zones, the academies, and we have academies like ICT, where we'll talk about, we'll talk about later. Then skilling centers like ASAP and CASE. And if we link and put this entire chain together, I am sure we'll be able to set up centers of excellence in hardware also. With these words, I'd like to end my talk. And on behalf of Electronics and Information Technology Department, Government of Kerala, I would like to thank the State Planning Board once again, and like to highlight that Government of Kerala and the department is eagerly looking forward for the opinions which will flow out of this particular conference. And we are looking for these opinions so that we can strategize the ways in which information technology and its policies can be worked out in the future. Thank you all and have a good day.
Thank you, sir. And thank you also for taking us to the key areas that we need to focus in the future as well. Thank you so much. It is indeed my pleasure to invite Dr. Saji Gopinath, Vice Chancellor, Kerala University of Digital Sciences, Innovation and Technology, for presenting the theme of the session. Before taking up the current role, he served as CEO, Kerala Startup Mission. Dr. Saji Gopinath served IIM Kozhikode for over 17 years as Professor, Dean Academic, and Dean Development. He is a recipient of several national and international awards for his academic and professional achievements. Very keen on listening to you, sir. Please.
Good morning, esteemed panel members and distinguished participants. It's a pleasure to be a part of this thematic conference. This is the second theme which we are doing on hardware. And as we know that electronics manufacturing is one of the key areas which Kerala has actually made great strides in the past. Like Honorable Secretary has mentioned, we still have excellence in a few areas, primarily by a few of the companies which are represented here. But if you look at the national scenario, a study in 2017 by ASSOCHAM and NEC actually projected that India will have a market of around 400 billion USD by 2025. But if you look at today, a very recent work of ISA has basically looked at that we are basically having a market of around 134 billion, and that is something which we need to grow into around 350 to 400 billion in the next 5 years. But interesting thing is that of this 134 billion, almost around 50% we are actually importing. Even though the rate of imports are now coming down, while the rate of growth of production is increasing, there is substantial amount of opportunity in this space. As Professor Jayaraman has rightly pointed out, India still don't have a very large electronic manufacturing base. We still account only for less than 3% of the global market. So in other words, if you look at multiple areas of electronic industry, be it consumer electronics, be it industrial electronics, there is a substantial gap between what we can do and what we are doing now. And I think that is the reason why this is generally considered as a second sunrise sector, because at some point of time, electronics was considered to be sunrise sector, then IT actually took over that. But now, with major push from the government, we are actually looking at next wave of growth for the electronics per se. And we have seen that in the recent past, it's growing at around 16% year on year. And the National Policy of Electronics, which is published in 2019, primarily look at how do we convert India to a global hub for mobile and various components of electronic manufacturing. So that is primarily the national scenario. I'll come back to this little later, a little more detail. Now, when you look at Kerala, as I said, was an early mover in the industry. We have the public sector organization Keltron, which made a substantial strides in 80s, 70s and 80s. And there was a high growth. In fact, one of the studies which was done by CDS shows that year-on-year growth of almost 32% was happening at that point of time with Keltron leading the show. And even today we have, and they also developed a very unique decentralized model of development of electronics with assembly units happening at multiple levels. And we, taking that legacy, there is a few larger players have come in ESDM, but still now Kerala has still not emerged as a major electronic cluster in the country. And that is an area I think we need to hear from our experts. What could be the challenges of converting or creating such sort of clusters in the state per se. There are niche development which happened in medical electronics, space electronics around VSSC and a few other organizations. Now we need to actually see how we will actually take it forward to the next level. Now, when we look forward, which is what this conference is all about, it's also important to look at what we currently have. So the hardware mission, which Honorable Secretary mentioned, has been a very detailed study about mapping of Kerala's electronic and hardware ecosystem. They identified a few areas, like they have identified that there are scientific research organizations led by VSSC, Sri Chitra Institution, Chitra Institute of Medical Sciences, CDAC in power electronics, RGCB, Trust Park. We have incubators like Maker Village and many others, and major government players who support this ecosystem development. And then there are key private players like SFO, Delphi, Hycon, and many of the others who will primarily driving this ecosystem per se. Now, and even as far as an industry development is concerned, there are 4 focused park has been set up. There's an EMC cluster has been set up in Kakinad, and there is a Nesta has set up a high-tech park in Ernakulam. A defense park is there in Palakkad, and Ambalur, there is an electronic hardware park also has been set up. So this sort of infrastructure and enabling elements are there. And when we look at the global trends, I'll not go into detail of this because of want of time, but when you look at the global trends, it's projected that electronics is actually one of the fastest growing industry. With 7.3 trillion USD by 2025, this is actually going to be a large opportunity for the countries in Asia. And if you look at the growth rate of this, you see that the high growth is happening in the Southeast Asia and South Asia and in China. And basically that shows that there is a potential for a big leap in this particular field per se. And with emergence of Industry 4.0, especially industrial Internet of Things, which the market is expected to hit around close to $1 trillion in next 5 years, you see that there is another scope, another leap of scope is there in this particular area per se. And when you look at the COVID, which Dr. Jayaraman has rightly mentioned, there is also supply chain disruptions which happened, which actually prompted many times people to look at how do I localize the supply chains, how do I look at new segments like the electric vehicles, the space technology, which are all growing in an exponential manner. All the whole, this sector actually provides a substantial amount of growth into in the days to come. If you look at the national trends, the Atmanirbhar model and the challenge that we still have almost 40% of our import of 3.59 lakh crores is coming from China, and we wanted to have the this import to be substituted by the domestic production. There is a substantial amount of emphasis on the electronic manufacture. The Electronic and Software Council for Promotion speaks about 16-fold growth in the export growth which has happened in the near future. Now, this all put up a huge opportunity in front of us. As I said, today 95% of active components, 50% of passive components are actually being imported. And this is an area where I think we'll have a substantial amount of scope if you really put the things in place. And in 2020, the government of India has also announced 3 new schemes. which primarily they are expected to spend around 50,000 crores to support this. I'm sure that when we hear later, how do we actually take, what are the challenges of getting this? How do you actually translate that in the field? This will be discussed, I'm sure, that in the discussions. So we will have very key sectors of growth which is possible for Kerala, specifically in medical electronics, EV related auto electronics, strategic electronics like aerospace and defense market, and also on the telecom products per se. Now, the question we need to debate and discuss in this session is that how do we make use of these opportunities? We have seen that there is a large need for import substitution. There is a huge growth which is happening in the existing demand itself. And if you look at nationally, we have the clusters happening, not necessarily in Kerala and outside Kerala. Some of the states like Andhra, which came much later, has actually developed very successful clusters. So how do we Kerala develop major electronic clusters? What are the challenges and what are the opportunities for that? So with this sort of a background, we put three themes for broader discussion. One is what will be the next stage of growth on electronic sector, especially with the Industry 4.0 coming in a big way, especially in the world of Internet of Things. And we also speak about supply chain component sector, which is a key element today when you look at even for a large MNC to start operation. We have Mr. Gautam Shankar, who is also a panelist, who will be speaking. I'm sure that he'll be speaking about how do we actually look at international players coming into this space. And also, the whole of country has a challenge of not having a proper fab. But it's very, very expensive. You have a huge amount of investment to be made on that. But that actually challenges many of our self-reliance programs. So what is the possibility of developing a fab, and what would be the method of looking at it? These are some of the themes I'm sure that we'll be discussing into the next 1.5 hours to 2 hours. Now, Hardware Mission has actually looked at the key challenges when we are looking at exploiting the market, and they also found that the mitigation strategies are also in place. The only perhaps one of the challenges that these are not being linked properly. So maybe what are those areas where we need to link them together is something which we'll be discussing as we go further. So like we discussed in the case of, this is my last slide, like we discussed in the case of software, any transformation or any exponential growth model which we are looking at have to come through a framework. And we believe that maybe a framework like this to look at how do we create the policies, models, and processes for this transformation is something which we need to come out of this 2-hour discussion. So we need to look at what type of the offerings, what sectors we need to focus on, how do we actually incentivize and support entrepreneurs and startups to go more on this, and what type of support infrastructure has to come from the state and other agencies, what type of governance models have to come in place so that we will have a specific deliverables which will actually make best use of opportunities. And like the earlier two speakers spoke about, how Kerala can actually enhance its footprint in the electronic field. Thank you very much for a patient listening. I'm sure that looking for an exciting discussion from the eminent panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, we have the presentations by experts in the panel. Each expert will be presenting initially for 10 minutes, which will be followed by an open discussion. Then the speakers can have their final observations. As experts today, we have Professor Prahalad Vadakeppat from the National University of Singapore, Mr. Christo George, Chairman and Managing Director, Hycon India Private Limited, Mr. Altaf Jahangir, CEO and Executive Director, Nest SFO Technologies, and Mr. Gautam Shankar, VP Operations, India and Japan, Kimball Electronics. The session will be moderated by Dr. Jayashankar Prasad, Managing Director, Kerala State IT Infrastructure Limited. Dr. Jayashankar Prasad, management professional with a technical background with extensive experience in industry, infrastructure, and e-governance, has handled various senior management portfolios in government as well as private organizations, and has been coordinating the activities of Hardware Mission as well. I would request Jayashankar sir to lead the session.
Yeah, thank you, Varun. Thank you, organizers, for calling me to moderate this session, and good morning to all. Dr. Saji has laid out a detailed description of what this conference is going to be, and I don't think I have much to add to that. And for want of time, we're just running short of a few minutes. So what I'll do is quickly move on to the speakers. Dr. Prahlad will join us later. So I would request Shri Christo George to, Mr. Christo, if you could please start off with your presentation first. We'll follow up with the presentation by Mr. Altaf Jahankar, and then go to Mr. Gautam. And by the time, I think we'll have Dr. Prahlad joining in. And I have a few points to be raised, because there's a lot of possibilities. There are schemes, a lot of things which have been laid out. But I think even our panelists can tell them how much of these schemes have been beneficial to them, how much actually has landed up with them, kind of stuff. I hope they will touch upon it. And then I'll probably have my words during that question and answer session. So over to Shri Christo.
Hi, good morning to all of you. On this exuberant morning, it's a great pleasure to be here on this conference. We should understand one thing is that the biggest disruption which is going to happen in this century will be in transportation and energy. When we say transportation, the IC vehicles, the IC engine vehicles will be disrupted by electric vehicles. And the industry leaders in automobile sector thinks that it will take maybe another 10 to 15 years. But in reality, it will hit the market the way the tsunami comes. We have seen that how the transformation has happened from land phone to mobile phones. And it was disrupted the entire ecosystem in land phone industries. Similarly, it is going to happen in electric vehicle. The reason is that the main cost of electric vehicle is the lithium-ion battery. And if you look at the cost of lithium-ion battery for the last 10 years, every year it is dropping more than 10 to 15%. That means in next 2 to 3 years, it will break even. The cost of electric vehicle will come down and it will become at par with the conventional IC engine vehicle. Then the entire disruption will happen. So we have to look forward. Once this disruptions happen, Kerala is having a great opportunity to enter into this segment, as there is a huge electronic hardware requirement is going to come up. Particularly DC controllers, BMS, battery itself is having a lot of hardware requirements. Then BMS and DC controllers and DC motors, BLDC motors, chargers, different type of chargers, fast chargers, slow chargers. This is giving a huge opportunity for the MSME sector also. Not only big companies, even small companies can enter into this sector. So we have to grab this technology, because here the major disadvantage, if you look at Kerala companies, is not having the technology. So from where they can gain the technology, like in other countries or all over the world. If you look, the industries are supported by the universities, and the technology is developed jointly with industries and universities. Here that we lack. So that is one area we have to look forward. Second area is which is going to disrupt in the coming days is in the conventional energy sector. The conventional energy which is produced will be disrupted with solar. The reason is that the solar panel cost is coming down. Every year it is dropping more than 10 to 15%, like lithium-ion battery. So once the cost is dropping, if you look at 5 years back, the solar panel was costing more than 30 rupees per watt. In next 2 years, the solar panel cost will reach to 10 rupees, by which the solar energy production will be cheaper than the conventional energy production. Then the huge market will open up, and every rooftop will become a power producing center. So what are the opportunity of hardware there for Kerala companies is huge. Even not a single company in India is manufacturing grid inverters now. There are 100 type of inverters available in the market, but grid inverter technology is still, I think 1 or 2 companies may start developing that, but in a large scale with a competitive cost, not a single company available in India. So you can see the solar segment is exponentially growing, but there is no manufacturing of on-grid inverters right now in India. So Kerala, there's a huge opportunity in solar area, particularly in the hardware. I'm not talking about solar panel manufacturing, which is require more investment and more space, but there's a huge scope for hardware sector like off-grid inverters, on-grid inverters, DC-DC chargers, AJBs. So a lot of related hardware is required for this segment. So the question again is where is the technology coming from? And most of industries all over the world, if you look at the possibility in Kerala is for the MSME sector because of space constraint. And we have a huge pool of smart workers in Kerala, which is excellent. I can say from the past 30 years, we are manufacturing inverters in Kerala. And we are one of the first company in India to start inverters in Kerala. And we are not taken to the scale up because of many factors, but we never had faced any labor problem in Kerala. We are so happy that we have excellent team of people here who are good in workers. We can understand the young generation is totally different than the old generation. So this new kind of energy sector, the new kind of technologies, it's very important to have a new culture, which is already there in Kerala now, because everybody want to start as a startup, or the respect is getting there in the industries and the startups. It was not there if you look back 10 or 15 years. So the climate in Kerala is ready for that. Now the question is how to reach to the, or how to get this technology. We have a lot of R&D centers under government. Even Caltron is having that, Thematic is there. What I propose is that to go to a mass level manufacturing of hardware in Kerala, we need a PPP model of design centers. This design center should develop technology which is required for EV and solar, which is not a very high-end technologies, which can be mass produced. And this technology should be given at a subsidized rates for MSMEs. With an investment of 2 to 3 crores, we can make thousands of industries in Kerala where the startups or industries are willing to invest. And right now, Kerala, there are 100 people are willing to invest. Only drawback there is from where the technology should come. So if that gap is filled, not only the technology people, that a PPP model, if it is happened, this technology is available at a low cost and it has been taken to the MSME sector. We can have industrial park exclusively for hardware, electronic hardwares like specifically for electric vehicles and solar, because it's almost same, because electric vehicle in future needs solar power to charge the batteries. So the entire ecosystem can be identified and the product technology development has to be done from the government with the initiative of government institutions, R&D centers and universities. This technology can be taken to the industries at a cheaper rate. This subsidy has to be given for the technology transfer, not for the incentive for manufacturing and all. It is not required. Industries are not looking for any support other than getting the technology, right technology at a cheaper rate. Many times we are seeing that the government is developing a technology which is given for the MSME. That cost, they are looking at a very high cost. I don't know why. If you want the industry to develop here, because MSME sector need technologies, which is very expensive to run a R&D center like us. We are having a approved R&D center, center government R&D center also. To maintain a R&D center for a small industries or a medium scale industries is very difficult. So that is one area. If that investment comes in by the government, then that is transferred. Huge expansion of industries is very much possible in the state of Kerala. For that, we have already identified by IT policy, the electronic hardware segment. It's all listed out. Earlier in the presentation, Sajid sir has given very clear directions. What are the potential areas? So the paperwork is already there. The themes are already there. Now the implementation of the system to be done. For that, first we need a park. We are talking about the park for the last 5 years, the electronic parks. So let us focus have a roadmap and implement and make available this space for the ecosystem to develop. So once it's integrated, now government is for that, the industries are for that, the people is readily accepting Kerala. Without industry, Kerala cannot go forward. And Kerala is an industry where sustainable energy or sustainable growth kind of industry can happen only in Kerala, because people are very aware we don't want polluted type of industries in Kerala. So the entire.
Sir, I just drop in at that point. So basically what you're saying is entrepreneurs are not very keen on getting any financial subsidies. They want support for translation of R&D to MSMEs at a affordable cost is the key highlight that I got from your.
Yes. It's very difficult. Even we are a centralized approval center. Getting the benefit of R&D product development is very negligible. I don't think any of Kerala companies have received that funding.
Okay, I will come back to you on this, sir. I'll just quickly move on to other speakers also for their initial round of sessions, and then I'll come back to you on the second round. Meanwhile, you can also reflect on some of the comments by other speakers also. Now, moving on to Mr. Altaf Jankar, or is it Shri Thomas Abraham from SFO who's taking on the session? Kindly go ahead with your session, sir.
Yeah, this is Altaf Jahangir. So thank you so much for giving us an opportunity to be part of this elite panelist. So thanks, Mr. Sajid Gopinath, as well as the entire Kerala government for setting up an ecosystem where we will be able to address our points. So since I am not in office and since I have an hospital, I am asking Mr. Thomas Abraham, who is also present here, to start with the presentation. And I will add on the points while he starts with off.
Yeah, thank you, Altaf, and sorry for pushing you too hard on this. Sorry.
No problem. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Varun, please unmute Thomas, sir.
Yeah, am I audible now?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Now I will share a screen, and can you enable my screen sharing? It shows host disabled participant screen sharing.
Just change it, shift it to Mr. Thomas Abraham. I think you might have enabled Mr. Jahangir. Are you able to share it now?
No, still it says disabled.
Yes, sir. In 2 minutes it will be maximum. Yeah.
Sorry for this disruption. We were thinking that Altaf can join and speak at the last minute because he's not well.
You can go ahead, and meanwhile the screen also will come through.
No, I think I need those screens because those are important points which I need to present today. So
I really think
Varun,
at the planning board end, are we?
Varun, is it possible? Have you done it?
Yes, sir. It is not with. I mean, I don't have the permission as of now. So
He is now given. So it is,
doing it. Coordinators are doing it. Yeah. Now it is done. Sir, can you please check again?
yeah, okay. Yeah, it's come in now.
Go ahead, sir. Very nice.
Is it clear now to everybody? The screens?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. See, the thing what we want to start is to give some statistics which are very important for our setting up this presentation. So we have seen some of those reports which is coming in and pouring in. we found that some of the very interesting reports, which I'm showing here, we are world's most promising source of disruptive technology, second most promising source of disruptive technology, world's largest producer of, third largest producer of electricity, world's third largest military spender. We rank 34th in the global skill index, international intellectual property index. We are ranking 40th, and in the global innovation index, we are ranking 48th. These are very important aspects when it comes to USDM ecosystem building in this country, and we are there somewhere near in the top half, but we need to really, come up in the second half of it. So these are things which all of us can note down, so that as we progress on this discussion, we will get to know where we are coming from. Kerala statistics adjudged as the best governed state in India, which really requires an applause. Then 10th among export preparedness, which we need to come up. A lot of the other states, 9 states are ahead of us. And we are, as you see, Kerala compared with the rest of the best state is Gujarat right now. And this shows some of the things like policy, business ecosystem, export ecosystem, and export performance. We are far below, especially in export ecosystem. Even though we have the port and we have the airports, as well as we have the rail transport system, it looks like there is some big lacuna in the way we are today prepared for export from Kerala. Then we also rank 5th in the Global Innovation Index prepared by Niti Aayog. So these are things which we need to, still think about as we move on as a state and bring in ESDM to Kerala. Now, we have some of the good things like the best score for school education index. 2020, we are 82.17 when compared, and the female literacy rate is 92%. All these things are known to us, but then I'm just, highlighting these points for us to have preparedness as we discuss on where we can take our advantages to ensure that these advantages materialize into the ESDM sector. Now, ease of doing business, we have completed the stipulations of the Government of India, and we are now eligible for an additional borrowing of $325 million US. And we have established, I think, the first medical devices park in MedSpark Life Science Park at Trivandrum with Sri Chitra, which is also a very good aspect when it comes to the Kerala ESDM industry. Now, the companies which are there in Kerala, I have given here a district-wise division of these number of companies. As you see, Ernakulam accounts to 61 companies and Trivandrum 15 companies, and rest of the districts are showing very poorly for the component manufacturing in India's ESDM industry, which is a very large pointer that we have to now think about how to utilize rest of the districts also for our, and as a state we need to really think why rest of the districts are not faring well compared to Ernakulam and Trivandrum. But even in Ernakulam and Trivandrum, it's just in Ernakulam is just 61 component manufacturing companies and 15 in Trivandrum. Now, coming to the current potential for favoring this ESDM market, India is, as Dr. Saji Govindrath was saying, India is importing almost $60 billion worth of electronic equipment, assemblies, components, or raw materials, majorly from China. Now, this is a thing which we have to, we should all ponder why we need to import after we are independent for 72 years now. Now, also this is understood by the government today, and there is a push for domestic marketing, which we know through the Make in India program and rest of the programs. But then we may even, overtake the crude oil imports, may overtake the electronics imports is what is today being thought about in the government circles. Now, this has to stop, and if this has to stop, there is an incentivization that is needed for this industry very soon. Why we say this? We are in this market for this 30 years now, and we have grown to become one of the largest players of ESDM in the country today. And we have experienced why, and we also know why we are non-competitive in the international market. And unless we get a level playing field in the ESDM industry today, becoming by ourselves competitive is not possible. And as you will see in my later presentations, later slides, you will understand this. And there is a huge opportunity to have direct employment, both for male and female workers, skilled workers as well as unskilled labor in this industry. So that has to, definitely be taken into account. And this panel, as well as the government, honorable government, will definitely look into this, is what we are thinking about when we are presenting this to you today. Coming to the next slide. Something which has happened, it's not going through. There is a future potential for us. We have become the second largest smartphone market. Indian Railway is planning to invest $69,000 million to enhance the metro rail network of India in the Indian cities. And country is forecasted to become the fourth largest TV market, as also Krista was mentioning, in the next 20 years is what has been predicted, but then he says it will be much faster. So potential to become a major manufacturing hub for electric vehicles, wearable devices, automotive electronics, sensors, smart devices, medical electronics, and industrial electronics in the very, very near future is what Elcina themselves have portrayed. Now, coming to the next slide. See, now coming to what is SFO, to make us understand in this 30 years how we have progressed in spite of all the hurdles which we have faced in the last 30 years. Now, you will see that in this 30 years, we progressed basically because we did not focus on just one segment, whether it's PCBA or any such thing. We progressed because we are a one-stop shop solution provider from concept to products. We are, whether somebody approaches us to design a product from concept to a product and then manufacture it, or any part of the product design cycle, we will take up, whether it's software or embedded software or hardware, we will do that. Whether it is to develop the mechanical designs, we will do that, or whether it's cable wire harness, or it is fiber optics, or it is electronics, or RF and wireless. All these areas we will be focusing on. That is the reason why we were able to move on to reach to this level, to become a large player in this country in spite of the global competition which we faced. It might surprise you, we produced just from our Cochin facility PCBAs of 22.20 million parts. PCBAs alone we produced in the last 1 year. Even though it was a pandemic struck year, this is a good achievement which can open the eyes of all of us, saying that knowing that yes, in Kerala we can do this kind of work. We have 60 plus original design and manufacturing customers making trend-setting products for the globe, and we are doing that from our facility in Kerala, from our facility in Bangalore, in Pune, and also in Mysore. And we have retained these customers over 15 years now. So if we can retain a global customer for 15 years and keep producing from this state of Kerala, I think there is no reason why this industry should not progress in this state. We are partner of choice, in fact, for the Fortune 500 clients across the globe, and we get repeat business.
Thomas sir, I, for want of time, I might request you to quickly maybe take a few minutes and move forward. I'll come back to you on the second round. We specifically on this particular question, that you are such a huge player and we would like to build an ecosystem around you. So in another couple of minutes, if you could, we'll wind up the first round and then later come back for the second part of it.
Okay. See, our verticals are shown here and services. This is the reason why I said it's a one-stop solution provider. And, you know, there are certain things which we want to, there are some challenges for basing, which we faced because SFO is based in Kerala and in India. Basically, from the component segment, you will see any electronic item. If you see, the largest cost components are basically the ICs and related components. Then we have PCBs. Then we have the transformers, and we have the connectors. Now, when it comes to these kind of components, the biggest problem we are facing is, of course, Dr. Saji mentioned about the no local fab available. So we need to import this. We also have problem, even though we have good PCB manufacturers in India, we face this problem from abroad. They are not in the approved vendor list. Because they are not approved in the vendor list, and country-specific certifications are done by our customers for their products to sell in those specific countries, to get a part now approved, whether it's PCBA, whether it is relays, or whether it is connectors or any other part. Even though we do a lot of value engineering services free even to our customers, we are not able to get these Indian suppliers listed in the approved vendor list. Now, this is a major hurdle which we are facing. So we need to go back to the original manufacturer of those components, whether it is from China, Taiwan, or South Korea, or any of those countries. And this is the problem, a major problem which we have been facing, even though when we want to do localization. So when we are thinking about developing an ecosystem for the component industry, we should think that there is a huge resistance on the part of the OEs across the globe to, you know, change their AVL for local components. It takes time. So we need to actually work towards this as a state when we build this, so that, you know, the state will also participate with us to, you know, help us in projecting these components are equally good and can be used in their products. Then the other thing which I want to mention is the challenges like the high cost of financing, and because this is a capex intensive industry, this is an important aspect. There is absolutely no level playing field with Chinese suppliers and the disability factor of India. I will show that in the next slide. And lesser efficient waste management disposal system for electronics in India, which is a very critical aspect which is to be looked into by our state. And large component suppliers, the Arrows and the Avnets of the world, they don't have a stocking point in India, leave alone Kerala. Now, this is something which we need to address, in our opinion, together, and then go into the aspect of providing a solution for this. So our proposed interventions will be basically to cover up the disability factor faced by India. You know, we face as an EMS supplier compared to Chinese companies, roughly 8.53% for high mix and low volume market, and 6.97% for the high volume low mix categories, considering that our import cost for the components is high. Our labor cost is labor cost, then the power cost, then the manufacturing cost, the logistic cost, and the cost of financing, plus the preferential policies in China. All these is contributing to this large disability factor for India, and this is what we are fighting against in the global market. This is not our what we have arrived at. It is arrived by the EMS task force set up by Elsina themselves, and this report is 2021 report. I'm taking extract from that. So Kerala government may decide to support EMS companies by incentivizing. Some kind of incentivizing has to be thought about for the players from Kerala if they have to really come to this place and then work towards achieving this. Otherwise, we will not become competitive in the world market at all. Then coming to, there are a couple of more propositions from our end. You know, there is, I told you earlier that there is no stocking point in India. We can project our port, our rail, our air connectivity, the Vallarpadam terminal, the low cost land available in Kerala compared to rest of the metro cities, and the skilled English speaking manpower and labor available in our state. Definitely, we can make sure that the supply chain channel partner sets up a facility like Arrow or Avnet, set up their stocking facility in Kerala. This is a very novel way of looking at bringing the component industry here, component availability here quickly, and Kerala can be definitely thought about by these companies, and government of Kerala can definitely support us and work with us to ensure that we move and progress in this direction. And the policy, which Dr. Saji Gopinath 2017 policy, which was mentioned by him, this needs a lot of publicity. Right now, it is not even known to the Kerala diaspora working in ESDME companies abroad, or working for working for the OEs abroad. Not only for the Kerala diaspora, it is not even known to many of the top brass in the OE sector across the globe. This is something to be communicated well. This is something to be publicized well. If you can do that, this is going to definitely, it's an easy task compared to many other things which the government can do. And industry can support you, industry can join with you, and we can definitely make sure that this is, publicized much more, and definitely that we can reap some benefits out of that. Let me stop now. Let me thank you and stop.
Thank you.
Because of want of
Thank
time.
you, sir. That was quite a comprehensive coverage, and very. There are specific points which you have taken down. I'll come back to that, but for want of time, I'll quickly move on to Gautam Shankar. We have also Dr. Prahalad joined in. So Gautam, you may take over, and then we'll follow up with Dr. Prahalad, and then I'll have some questions on this. Gautam?
Yeah, sure, Jaishankar. Thank you so much. I just want to get my screen shared. Just give me a second. Are you able to see my screen?
Yeah, we are.
Okay. So I want to, starting off, thank you so much for the opportunity to be on the panel today. Kimball is new to Kerala and to India. So I would like to start off by giving a short introduction to Kimball. I expect to take just about 2 minutes or something there, and then go on to some of my thoughts and ideas on the hardware sector in Kerala. I want to just let everyone know that at the moment we don't have any hardware happening in India, but we do that globally. So Kimball is headquartered in the US in Indiana, and the last year's closing revenue was $1.2 billion. We primarily work in automotive, public safety, medical, and industrial. These are 4 chosen verticals for us. In terms of the facilities Kimball has around the globe, so we have facilities in Mexico, 4 in the US. We have 2 facilities in Europe, 1 in China and 1 in Thailand. And it is all of them are state-of-the-art manufacturing facilities where we do various kinds of electronic manufacturing and also diversified component manufacturing, total of about 6,000 employees globally. Now GES, which is a part of Kimball, is what I primarily represent. We do a lot of custom automation test and measurement equipment as well as software solutions, and with specific expertise in certain areas. Not going into any details. We have a volume manufacturing facility in Vietnam where we build many kinds of industrial machines. We also have a manufacturing facility in China where we build industrial machines. These are slightly different. When I come to the next slides, you'll really understand what the differences are, but these are not component level, these are system level manufacturing facilities. And in India, we are currently about 200 people working out of Technopark, and we are primarily focused on design and field service engineering at the moment for the Indian market. And the hardware part is something that we would be looking for in the coming years. So coming into my the part of my presentation. So today I really want to talk only about manufacturing. I think the hardware ecosystem can be broken down into design, which can include various kinds of design, right from VLSI to mechanical, electrical, all of those things. And there are a lot of fabless companies, manufacturing, and finally the distribution aspect. One of the reasons why I am taking a very simplistic view for want of time, and I think that cannot go into more detail in this particular forum. But I will talk primarily about the manufacturing part today because I think that is more relevant. So to start off, I want to give you an idea of what we consider as Industry 4.0. Okay, we talked about Industry 4.0. Many people talked about what Industry 4.0. We haven't really touched upon what we think it is, right? So Industry 4.0, the way we look at it is it goes for the entire ecosystem, starting from suppliers to customers. And in the middle, which is the major part of it, is the smart factory where it applies. Now, for smart factory systems also have you can break it down into 2 systems, 2 major blocks. One is software, one is shop floor. Software, I think many of us already have some idea. There are companies I know of who work in smart factory software solutions, but let's come to the hardware side, or the shop floor side, right? So on the shop floor side, there are several things which are part of the Industry 4.0. One is the intelligent sensors and actors. And why I took Industry 4.0, because just like, we can, from an industry perspective, EVs, smart consumer electronics, medical, there are specific industries which are really important today, and as my previous speakers have already mentioned, but this is more generic. So for any industry, when we talk about Industry 4.0 and improving the productivity and the manufacturing capabilities, we have to look at these things. So intelligent sensors how to make the workforce more mobile, additive manufacturing, cyber physical systems, which is a interconnection of the cyber systems to the actual physical production systems, automated guided vehicles and such, which run inside a factory, robotics of various levels, especially in the more recent context, flexible robotics or cobots or collaborative robotics, those kind of advanced areas in robotics. Smart maintenance, artificial intelligence, and advanced materials. So these are all areas which form part of Industry 4.0 as we look at it inside of Kimball. And I think is also relevant when we look at the overall ecosystem. Why I'm saying this is many of these also offer us opportunities as investment in hardware. So as part of creating these hardwares, which support the overall Industry 4.0. Industry 4.0 itself is a fairly large business opportunity as we move forward. So I am going to move on to, so what I think are some opportunities, right? So when we look at the hardware sector, we talked about fabs. Actually, very interestingly, Thomas sir mentioned about SFO being probably in all of these things, maybe other than the opportunity number 6, or I don't know if they do something on opportunity 5, but hardware, I think, can be broken down into some of these opportunities and can be subdivided further into other things. But to keep it broad, one is the equipment that goes into a factory. So that is the test and measurement or assembly equipment that goes into a manufacturing factory. That is hardware plus software, but primarily hardware driven. The second is the parts or components that go into such a system, right? So that is the electromechanical systems, robots, transport, various kinds of parts which go into making these systems, right? Now these two are kind of macro. When I say macro, I mean these are larger, bigger systems. The conceptually, I would put them into a bracket of macro systems. Then it comes into the more specific EMS or smaller part manufacturing kind of area, where definitely there is an opportunity in assembly of systems. I think this is a relatively easier, and I'll come to why I say so, but assembly of systems. Then the opportunity number 4, I think, is module or sub-assembly or racks or consoles, things like that, which are, you know, smaller parts of a bigger. So even if you break down something like a mobile phone, the assembly typically happens not in one place. It happens in at least three spaces. One will be the component or discrete area where the components are produced. Then there will be the module assembly where these components are put together into modules. And then there will be a final assembly and test where the modules are put together into a larger assembly. And typically, we see this happen in different facilities or different factories, not in the same kind of factory. So even within something like a mobile phone manufacturing, there is a need for 3 different kinds of infrastructure when it comes to factories. And the technology and other various aspects are different when we consider these. So I have broken these opportunities into assembly, module, and discretes or semiconductor, fab, what we more popularly call as fabs. And diversified contract manufacturing is another area. Diversified contract manufacturing basically means things like some of your medical assemblies, for example, which go into, let's say, surgical parts or surgical disposables or things like that, where there is plastic molding plus some metal, a combination of plastic and metal, things like that. That is also an area which is again slightly different from the other areas, because diversified contract manufacturing requires a different set of equipment and different set of know-how. So anyway, I think that there are 5 or 6 blocks that we could break up our opportunities into, and then specifically we need to understand and address each one of them when we look at. So I just tried to put right? I was just trying to think about what could be the different requirements for any of these. So for any of these 6 opportunities, what are the requirements that we would want to look at? And this is definitely not exhaustive, but could provide some, and many of these things have already come up in what the earlier speakers talked about. Roads and last mile connectivity, extremely important for any of these industries. 24/7 power supply, again, that depends on the industry, but important. Labor policy, environment, labor and policy, environment, government support, extremely important when it comes to hardware. Supply chain, extremely important, which we all had some shipping and logistics. Financial incentives, Thomas talked about that difference gap in preferential treatment in China and things like that. So how do we incentivize it? Regulatory environment, I think foreign investment is an important part uh, to bring something up from where we are to build that economy of hardware systems, ecosystem of hardware. Foreign investment is a really important one. Quality systems awareness, testing and certification, I think is important. Access to R&D facilities and people, training and capability building, and finally safety, security and stability. So I think, I just tried to break it up into some of the important things which I want to take an example where I'm kind of saying, okay, what if I'm looking at opportunity number 1 and how do these blocks figure, right? So for opportunity number 1, capital and financing requirements are reasonably low. And when I say low, just to give you a scale, we might be talking about maybe $1 million or a few $1 million. But when you're talking about a fab, you're talking about a few $1 billion, right? A component fab, let's say the TSMC fab in Taiwan was set up at a cost of $9 billion, right? And the smaller, like the robot manufacturing or system manufacturing, can be set up at a much lower cost. So capital and financing requirements vary widely across the spectrum of opportunity 1 to 8. Manufacturing schedules are important because batch manufacturing can, you can afford a little bit of downtime here or there. You can make it up by doing certain things, but a continuous flow kind of manufacturing setup cannot afford any breaks. You have to have 24/7 necessarily. Supply chain is again very different. So if you're making this opportunity 1, you're looking at subsystems, optics, robotics, larger components, right? You still need some clean room facility, you need ESD, etc. But all the components are slightly macro level.
Gautam, I may just quickly come in. Probably the requirements that you are highlighting, some of these players who are there in the panel, like SFO, they already have.
Yes, yes.
So they are players, which this is possible in the state. So
yeah.
If you could quickly sum up on it, I'll go back to Dr. Prasad, and then we'll have a second round going fast.
Sure. I'll just take maybe 2 more minutes, Jayshankar. So it is already there at some levels. My intention here was only to talk about that level. So, try to put all this into some numbers to see the ease or difficulty of looking at each of these opportunities when we are looking at it as something that we want to do at a state level. And I think as we go towards the right, the economies of scale become very important. So if you are setting up a fab, unless you have the economies of scale, you won't be financially profitable to run it as a fab. I believe even with incentives, it wouldn't fly unless we have certain economies of scale. So my idea was to just put it together in a framework and put some numbers to kind of see what might be easy or difficult for us to start with, and then progress along the way. Difficult doesn't mean we cannot do it. It's just that we need to understand the difficulty levels when we are looking at it. So before I stop, I just wanted to say that probably, and this is just my personal opinion, but if we are starting to look at developing companies and building this ecosystem as a roadmap, we should probably look at this kind of a framework and then identify what should be the roadmap and how we can specifically address and what opportunities we should be targeting. So with that, I want to stop. once again, thanks for the opportunity to present today.
Thank you for that presentation, brother. Quite structured. My question, which I'll come back to you later, is like, what would bring your hardware manufacturing to Kerala? So that would be the question.
Yeah. So just
Dr. Prahlad, professor from National University of Singapore, I think he's into AI, robotics, and a lot of areas which we are interested in. He's also associated with this ecosystem, so he's aware about it. Dr. Prahlad, if you could take over and then move forward.
Can you unmute? Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir. You're visible.
Okay. Thank you very much. So happy to be here. I'm from Singapore, and I work in robotics, AI, frugal innovation. Some friends helped me to give inputs into this presentation. I'd like to start with a practice story. Two of the companies from Singapore and a company from Kochi came together during COVID to develop affordable emergency ventilators. And we completed that. And there were different technologies involved. And none of these companies were good at everything. So that we came together to help each other. And the one aspect we looked at is all the cost of these ventilators is so high. If you look at the feature versus cost and feature versus utility, we can try to have 1/10 of a cost. That is a frugality aspect where we can bring in affordability and make these products available to people. So this is a concept of more from less. So it is not about reducing in terms of the simply stripping of features. And another aspect we looked at is what is known as open innovation. The three companies could not have done it unless they were trying to open themselves to each other. And of course, we had good thought leadership and inclusive leadership to really help each other. And we also looked at, got help from US, Europe, India, Singapore, and also from some of the institutes in India, like Fluid Control Research Institute, a number of doctors, a number of my colleagues from National University of Singapore also helped. So we try to create a borderless, multi-close disciplinary approach for taking care of complex problems. And handling a ventilator with a human in the loop system was found to be quite tough. And we have to really approach it without a preset mindset. And also hierarchy we removed in that organization process. And later on, the team decided, why don't we get into robotics? And then in Singapore, we have the Advanced Remanufacturing Technology Center with whom I work, and they lead the Ross Industrial Consortium in Asia Pacific. And the members, selected members from these three companies got into learning robot operating system. And this is something which I use in my modules in National University of Singapore. And there is an industrial version as well. It helps us to really do a number of experiments with physics engine, and you can import the worlds from a design software into ROS. So this is something which I recommend in the educational institutions as well as in industries to help reducing the cost, especially during prototyping and control related or algorithms or AI systems. Industry 4.0, I could not join in the beginning because of my conflict here. I had a lecture, but you might have already spoke about it. So what is happening in the world is that the complex tasks are being now executed by machines. Earlier, it was not. So this is going to disrupt, and by 2025, as per the World Economic Forum, the new division of labor among humans, machines, and algorithms, 97 new jobs will create, new roles will be created, 85 million jobs will be displaced. And this we have to keep in mind. And this is from Shenzhen, and they are going to focus on chips, AI, biomedicine to grow GDP by 40%. And Industry 4.0 has the aspects like efficiency, innovation, and how to have agile development for stronger customer centricity. And the technology opportunities, a SWOT analysis, this is done with a number of people through interviews and some kind of focus discussions. We have a very good public education system. People are aware of a lot of things and good at connectivity. And urbanization is not focused like Singapore or other countries. It is quite distributed. But however, our educational concepts are outdated. Though I was involved in some activities at the KTU, and we have loose frameworks, and political stability is something which we have to be mindful of. Alternate governments, different governments come and go. And the work culture in terms of the professionalism, how to really bring about a change, and also staff policies, how to change. I may not be completely aware of those, so pardon me if I'm making a mistake here. And what is happening in the world is the technology is changing. I've changed my modules or the syllabus in the last 22 years, 5 to 6 times, major changes. And there are a lot of brain drains. I have students from Kerala and India, even from government and non-government colleges working. They are doing very good, but those drains are not going back. So we have to keep them. So also the delay and fast advancements in other countries, but we're all global citizens. And Fab City can help in decentralized urbanization, make anywhere and ship anywhere kind of concept. And the Industry 4.0, Fab City, and digital component manufacturing, I'm not going to the depth of it, but you all spoke about it. But some concepts I would like to put across, that open innovation and open source will help a lot in the Industry 4.0 space. And there are so much available, especially in robotics, AI, machine learning, deep learning related aspects out there in open source. I know some people could really make an autonomous car within months. So 3-4 of my undergraduate students in third year, they went to a company in Singapore and they downloaded all the open source, and they could make an electric vehicle as an autonomous vehicle in that company. And in Kerala, that is also possible. And there are a lot of people who are capable of doing. The value add in terms of local engineering ecosystem, I think I was quite surprised to see that we have a lot of things happening at the district level. That can be known to people, and then we can create business-oriented initiatives with the local bodies and educational institutions. The educational institutions have so much resource. Unfortunately, I don't know how much that is being utilized. Everybody has to do finally a project. Is that a resource being utilized? I doubt. Of course, the public-private partnership is very important. And I'm not going to talk about the Fab City, but there are some aspects which I'll be talking about later on in terms of some inputs from the startup and other players in Kerala and Tamil Nadu. I would like to suggest that every bachelor's degree in Kerala should have an innovation enterprise module where user desirability, technical feasibility, and business viability, including the art of persuasive oral communication, to be included, and it has to be facilitated by entrepreneurs. I teach these modules in my university because I'm an entrepreneur. Now, it is very important to understand the technology readiness levels, especially in robotics. There are different levels, TRLs. And where do we stand in Kerala with regard to TRL? I could not get much information on that. Also, the capability mapping to the TRL levels. I happened to chair Futurescape 2025 in Singapore in 2014. We took 10 months to really plan, and that was submitted to the government. So the technology readiness levels and capability mappings are very important, and there are many unknowns out there. So how do we go about coming up with a new horizon? Can we redefine a framework where knowledge is important? You have to engage with institutions and universities. And technology is important, and technology has to penetrate to the educational institutions, and it should be connected to business. So how do you translate? So translational research, it has to be encouraged. And maybe we have to think about, we cannot talk in terms of 10 years is too long now. Maybe 3 to 5 year entrepreneurship and technology map that can be really worked out. And one important thing we do is lifelong learning. People can, even in the mid-level or higher level, they can come and learn. We offer Industry 4.0 master's level programs. We get people from Saudi Arabia, China, India, Australia, and other places. And that is something which we have to really come up with. So an academic industry alliance in Southeast Asia, like Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Singapore, for knowledge transfer is very important. And a lot of investment is happening in healthcare and life science. Can we have a bio plus digital? And engineering and medicine is becoming a hotbed. So a cluster of industries can be created for self-sustainable in a long run, and government can become an investor. And that is something very important. And then to invest in AI Industry 4.0 kind of high growth level spaces. And healthcare and biomedical are becoming very hot. So much of money is flowing into that space, and also in biomanufacturing. But there are some pain points with that. I will stop soon. For us, dual-sided, multi-layered PCB board manufacturing, we could not do it in Kerala. We had to go to Bangalore during this COVID. And the labs are good, but imported high-cost 3D printers are not always needed because the material cost is not affordable for startups. And large-scale manufacturing is not possible with Fab Lab. So this is from Trivandrum. Someone gave me an input that they can make 1 or 2 robots at a time, cannot scale it up. And skilled services are hard to find. And some quick inputs, I'm not sure whether how much relevant it is. So some suggestion was, can street light automation be given to people who are working Fab Labs? This is happening in Tamil Nadu, and it is very good. So can there be some preferences for hardware projects to give unto those people? So can also bring in experts for various PCB manufacturing industries to train people. And there are some issues with respect to payments. Some people gave me that input. And to give more importance to companies who are building newer technologies. And the new mantra can be open innovation, co-development, inclusive leadership, frugality, agile development. And we've been working in Industry 4.0. Some references are here. I would like to stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Prahlad. Quickly putting a point on that, the Superfab in Cochin is run with the support of SFO Technologies. It's being run by them, and that is also not a prototype lab. It's actually good for production. So that is one addition which you have gone from the initial Fab Labs. And now I think because of the delays, we have come up to the moderator-led questions, though I'd quickly go through a couple of them. One, to start with, Christo, sir, I think, sir, you are into EV manufacturing, as I see that. I knew you as a power electronics group. Now, when you get into this new area, what are the specific areas? Like, we put up so many schemes. Why does those schemes not translate to you, even Government of India schemes? That's one specific question I have. Second, for SFA Technologies, what is a difficulty in probably ramping up your local component manufacturers to the quality of those vendor lists that you already have? You being such a huge player and being there for the last so many years, what is holding you back? And to Gautam, as I told you, Gautam, what would bring your hardware manufacturing to this place? And I think probably Dr. Prahlad, you can listen from these people. I think these are much larger players. Probably some of the components of your questions already might be answered with that. And with that, I'll open up. I'll request the moderator to open up the anchors to open up the questions for the open discussions after these three people. We'll quickly start from Christo sir, moving to Thomas sir, and then to Gautam.
So I should start.
Yeah, please, sir. Please, sir. Yeah.
So your question is in EV, what we are facing the challenges. There's a great subsidy given for EV in India right now, and the subsidy is up to the tune of in three-wheeler. If you look at, we are launching our three-wheeler by the end of or in the middle of February. It is all the approval is completed. Now manufacturing has been started in Kerala itself, near to Thrissur. The challenge what we are facing is that as per flame policy of central government, all the manufacturing parts, including motor, controller, everything has to be manufactured in India. And identifying right products becoming difficult. Only few manufacturers are there for these products. For getting a flame subsidy, so we have to launch the vehicle without subsidy, government support. Well, the big players like Mahindra, TVS, they take the subsidy because they have the manufacturing facility and the motor and controller they develop. We also develop, but many of the parts are not 100% from India. So we are not getting the subsidy one side. And Kerala state has launched a subsidy up to 25,000 for private companies and government companies 30,000. Okay, that we may get, but it has to be streamlined and it has to be processed faster to the customer. Then this segment will shoot up like anything. Not only in three-wheeler, there's a huge potential for two-wheeler, and it is rightly for in Kerala companies to start up in this segment charges. So the problem what we face, we are not able to get the leverage of central government policies sitting in Kerala.
I get the point, sir. Okay. Thomas, sir, from your side, what's
See, the thing is, there are 2-3 things what is important for us to understand when we are thinking about ramping up of the quality of our local component manufacturers. It's not the quality that is the problem which we are facing. The customers have already, our OE customers abroad, they have already got their own component list, which is approved through certain specific product certifications. Now, in the AVL list, approved vendor list, these components are coming at the design stage, either from any of our competitive countries, because they are the component manufacturers who supplied at the design stage, and the approval as product specific approval has come for them. It's very difficult for them to change it and then go through the approvals. Their own people would have changed, their own engineering team would have changed, and we are finding it a difficult thing. Second thing is the capacity of the Indian manufacturer and the cost constraints. Now, these are things which needs to be thought about. They produce in much larger volumes, and that is the reason why they are able to supply at very better prices. And the OEs also have established contracts with the manufacturer through the supply chain partner already, and these prices have to be matched. So the Indian ecosystem is not able to come up to that level, not because of the quality, but because of the other two aspects which I mentioned to you. So we are doing this work through our own added value engineering team at SFO, and we are trying to actually go to the OEs and then get this approved, but it's taking much more longer time. And what we are doing is we are replacing components sometimes, or we are providing alternate components, or we are re-engineering the PC board itself, and then giving these things to our customers, OE customers.
Is there something the state can do in this process?
Yes, Thomas, I will take that question.
Yeah.
So as Mr. Thomas mentioned, since we are into electronics manufacturing sector, the customer asks SFO to reduce cost. That is by bringing in localization, redesigning of the boards, and etc. So whenever we approach the customer with an alternate part that is developed within India, the major concern that we face is that we get very unavailable timelines from the TUV labs across India. For example, all the electronics PCBs, once it is manufactured, it has to go rigorous testing, like vibration testing, various other CE, UL certification. So what we have seen is that almost all the labs are established in Pune as well as in Bangalore. So because of this huge rush in electronics manufacturing business in India, being a company from Kerala, even though we have been there for last 30 years, what we feel is that in Kerala, if we can bring about test labs ecosystem, which will be a must for any manufacturing company that is coming to India, will be a great one of the initiative that the Kerala government can support, along with the electronics waste disposal. So to answer your question, one is that availability of the test labs. I understand in Karnataka, there's a consortium formed and there's a new lab, various types of lab being set up in Mysore. So this is certainly helping almost all the electronic manufacturing players. And secondly, because of these defense projects being ramped up, this also requires huge testing infrastructure. So this would be one critical area where we can work together to write the scope of the test labs that need to be coming to Kerala for not only for SFO, but for any electronic manufacturing sector. So that will be the main point. And second, as Mr. TA mentioned, the electronic waste disposal is a very critical element. So whenever we go to the customer saying that, okay, we have an alternate proposal, the second question is, okay, tell me how you're going to dispose the already present inventory of the electronics. So when we say that we don't have a capability in Kerala, that is also again challenged because they have to move from various other states and they have their own concerns. So this would be the two important elements that we should be considering when we are pitching Kerala as an electronic manufacturing hub.
Okay, great. I think thanks for that input. And Gautam, what would bring your hardware manufacturing to Kerala?
Yeah, Jayashekhar. So
I'm sure you would come, but then what more?
Yeah. So let me say this: we will definitely look at Kerala as an option because we are already headquartered here in Trivandrum. So for us, definitely that is going to be an option. But many things already have been talked about, and I think when I talked about that framework of 5 or 10 or 12 requirements, those are all important. But if I were to pick a few, I would say one, supply chain. Where do I get my supply chain from? Irrespective of whether I'm starting from opportunity 1 or opportunity 3. Right now, my belief is that the supply chain, scale of the supply chain is, or even quality of the supply chain is not up to the mark in Kerala. So I will have to go outside to look at it. So can something be done on that is number one. Number two, I think somebody mentioned there is a need for some equipment and parts to be imported. There is, it cannot be done away with if you're looking at a short term. And how do we manage that import-export, both from a disadvantage, financial disadvantage standpoint, also from a making the whole process smooth. How can we get equipment and parts and materials in quickly and sending it out quickly? How can we manage that part? Incentives, of course, will be important. So if I was to pick up 2 or 3 which I consider important, these would be those. But then all the others are also important. Last mile connectivity is important.
Yeah, I get it.
Labor, how the other things.
We probably need to have a GTEC kind of consortium for all our electronics and hardware manufacturers, so that you guys can probably complement and share experiences, kind of stuff.
Correct.
So
I would, I'm sure you've looked at it, the Taiwan kind of model in the 60s, 70s. That's the reason why Taiwan is where it is today. I think it was largely decentralized, starting from assembly and putting things together and all that, and then went on to foreign investment coming in and scaling that whole thing up.
I think there's a lot of similarities. We have the elements of the company, of the larger ecosystem here. We just need to connect and probably showcase and communicate, as Thomas has said. So I have a question for Dr. Prahlad. Will I come later? But then I would like to call, I think if we have Mr. Srijit, the operating officer of Coconix on the group. I'll request anchors to kindly enable him so that we can have a quick 2-minute case study. I think this is something with the state along with the companies formed for hardware manufacturing as an experiment. And this experiment got lauded at the Government of India level also. So Srijit, if you are enabled, can you just quickly go through?
Thanks, Dr. J. I'm audible. Hello. Can you unmute me?
Yes. You're audible.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Jaishankar, and thanks to the organizers for this wonderful presentation. A couple of points, as Dr. J said, Coconics is a unique PPP model set up between Government of Kerala. I think my video is also coming live. All right. Okay. I think I'm unmuted on the video. Hello.
I think quickly you'll lose time.
Yeah, I lose time. So I'll carry on. So it's a unique PPP model which was formed a couple of years back, and Dr. Jaishankar was very much involved during the feasibility study and also the implementation. So as you might have seen, Coconics has been lauded highly at the Government of India level, and also big corporations like Intel, AMDs, they all have recognized us. So a couple of points from my side is, we have shown that a homegrown company can compete with the multinationals and beat them on a fair and square basis. You might have seen some reports coming out. So what is required from the government side? Yes, there is beautiful policies laid by the government. There's been a beautiful feasibility study which has been done by Dr. J and the team, and which very clearly says for this company to crawl, walk, and run what is needed. What we need from the government, just make sure that the policy is implemented. So you need to have an aggregated demand which is assured to this company to make it a commercial viable. You need to have the right kind of paid up capital which has been envisaged from day one. So there is an order, there is a policy set by the government, wonderful policy, there is government orders, there is approvals. So we just want to make sure the government supports this company throughout, so that we can also create other ecosystems in and around us. Thank you, Dr. J.
Srijit, quickly one point. Are you on a price competitive with other companies now?
Dr. J, you might have seen we have competed with multinationals, and we have beaten them fair and square. One of the last previous tender also, we could beat them. And even right now, there's a tender which is recently concluded. It has been published in some of the newspapers, though we didn't see the results yet. Okay. But I think we are fair, we are there, and we can beat them fair and square, provided we have a volume which the government has guaranteed. So the policy makers or the implementers have to make sure that is given to the company.
Okay, thank you, Srijit. I just wanted the ecosystem to know that there has been such a project and it is ticking. So the pilot is run, good. Now we need to scale it up. Quickly, Dr. Prahlad, we spoke about the TRLs and making an assessment of the industry. But how do you go about doing a study? Like you said, what they have done in Singapore, like how do you do this comprehensive TRL for this industry?
Yeah, so the TRLs are well defined, and first of all, we need to understand them, what is meant by those capabilities. So I can share those details in terms of capabilities related to robotics. I've worked mainly on the robotics side and AI side. And I don't know how much information you have in terms of, say, the evaluation of capabilities in different industries. So that is something which we have to really have. So I know a number of robotics companies out there in Maker Village in Kochi. And then some of them they are capable of really building. So the technology readiness levels, a number of them, we can try to understand, and we can have a workshop on that and see whether we can map it in the right way. And we have to have the stakeholders and as well as the players in that workshop to see they can evaluate themselves based on the definitions. So that is how I would like to do. But in Singapore, we have been doing that for a long time. So the technology readiness level was clear to the players. So I did not go through the evaluation of that. But in order to reach another level for a particular industry to really start or an ecosystem to be facilitated, what are all the technological levels required? That has to be really understood. It has to go from 3 to 4, 4 to 5, or 7, like that. Did I put it in perspective?
Kind of, but then I think I'd pose this question to the general, all of the panelists as to would the industry come together, make a collective effort of it? So what I'm trying to see is, do we present a bouquet of capabilities from Kerala as such? Is there a complementary possibility, or are we on a rat race kind of stuff? I think I leave it open. Anyone who wants to comment. To take on. Otherwise, Jaravan sir, I think you can probably put up some questions from your end. Jaravan sir, do you have any questions on this?
It's just, I would like to, first of all, take this opportunity once again. Our panelists have made really, I think, very marvelous suggestions. And I think we have obtained value in, if I may say so, in two very specific ways. One, in how to frame the problem. And I think we have had some really sharp inputs. The other thing we have had inputs on are also things which are extremely specific. And it's like, things we can start off working on as soon as this conference is over. So, for instance, the suggestion of fixing the gap in test labs, that's, I think, very important. And I think the importance of inculcating a culture of innovation. What does it do to make successful innovation? Dr. Prahalad talked about, and I would really see how to implement that module through the education system if possible, or in the current scenario, the education system is not the only vehicle of education. We can put it out there, and sponsor it and push it amongst the younger generation. So I think these are all specifics, and I really loved, Gautam's talk about where he laid it out in this framework, and provides us a roadmap of how to go about thinking about it. So I think, there is a lot we have obtained to work on. But yeah, I'd like to ask the participants a quick couple of questions. How do states like Tamil Nadu and Gujarat score over Kerala? For instance, Gujarat has taken the lead in FAB. Whether it will work out or not, what it is, we will see. The Foxconn deal in Tamil Nadu, that's a very valuable thing. And this is something we were also perhaps thinking about. So what puts these states ahead? See, for instance, the test lab consortium is already moving in Karnataka. So if we do need it in Kerala, there's no question. But we are also catching up. So what does it take? What do you think is the gap? What should we do in Kerala to get us out there in the front of the pack? And not bringing up the second line. There's no harm in bringing up the second line in specific things. But in some things, at least, we must be out there in the front of the pack. What will it take to do this? I mean, this is my I think one of the real questions.
Yes, sir. I think we'll move through all the panelists once more. I think we've got time, 5 minutes each on all the panelists. Probably they'll probably try and address your questions, sir. So moving with Christo sir, and then
Dr. Jaishankar, maybe is there feedback from the audience? Would the audience like to chip in with some questions briefly?
I got a message from Srijit, so that's why I called him. Otherwise, I've not got any chats or anything. So we need to see whether the chats are muted or it's available. So meanwhile, I think we go with this second round with all the panelists, sir, so that your questions can get addressed. Christo, sir, I think you can respond to the question. Then we'll go to SFO, Kimball, and then Dr. Pranath.
So the basic requirement is a test lab. Every industry in electronics or in other electrical need a test certification now. So starting as test lab, there is a funding from central government, and as a PPP model, it can be done. Somebody has to take initiative, some association, because there's no electronic association here in Kerala. But as a Jaishankar sir, you can take an initiative and we'll make a test lab here. Industry has to put only 10 lakh. Balance 5 crores will come from center. Government has to provide only land. We discussed this with the DIC in Thrissur to make a land available so that we can take under CIA also. That discussion happened, but it's a very much important now to develop a test center. So we are open and we are ready to invest in that also. And many of the industries will be willing. So why don't we start as a first step to take a date, and if it's it, only government has to provide a 20 or 30 cent land or space.
Yeah, true. I think that's noted, sir. I think probably planning board will definitely look into it. And this is not a huge money from state also. I think enough land is available in parks across the place, and Ernakulam being a hub, there itself there are enough parks available. So to Sri Altaf or Thomas sir, I think you would like to comment to what Jaravan sir said.
Altaf, would you like to take this?
Thomas, you start. You please start this.
One of the things which I want to add is whether it's test lab or any other thing, what is important is what Chennai did long ago when the automobile sector was in competition to start the manufacturing of automobiles, all vehicles. Chennai, at that point of time, decided with all the media and the channels joining together with the government and also the industry over there, and decided to move ahead and start publicizing Chennai as the hub for electronic industry in this part of India, and that succeeded. And so many of the OEs came and established, all the car manufacturers from Chennai. So there was huge competition at that point of time from other parts of India also. Now, similarly, it is very important that we as the state, along with the media, work, because media can bring in a lot of interviews, a lot of kind of work which can be done, our media here as well as media abroad. Bringing in the kind of attention that is needed to Kerala is very essential. Along with that, to build that strategy, there can be a industry and government participatory forum. This forum can be thought about by the government leading from the front, and industries can join together and then decide what are the priorities, what is needed. The prioritizing the various aspects which we have talked about and the needs which we have talked about today. Once you prioritize that and then start working on it with time schedules, because most of these things remain in paper, and we need to have execution time schedules, implementation time schedules, and who will do what, at what level they will do. Dr. Jaishankar was talking about the coconics. Now, there was a complete implementation schedule which was there, and that got materialized because of that. So we also need to think about all the decisions what is taken after this through the planning board. Should be having a clear implementation plan. I'm sure all of you will be doing justice to this, and then immediately it will fly and it will have its impact. But then media participation is also equally important.
Right. Just to add on, Mr. Thomas John, and also in the question why Foxconn going to Chennai and other sectors. So we also had a study, and what we came to know is that because Chennai is already known for this automotive hub, the skilled resource availability is very much plenty there. That is one of the most critical item. And second, the alternate energy. As you know, the solar installation in Tamil Nadu is about among top 10 states in all over India. So company like Foxconn, which is into huge manufacturing, they look for this alternate energy source that is available, and also the resource pool. And I'm also told, and we are made to understand, there has been a quick window created between Foxconn and Tamil Nadu government in order to set up the infrastructure and run it under a 180 days time frame. So such kind of ease of working with the government in setting up a private infrastructure and make it run is one of the most essential component that will be also required in Kerala to make it happen. And also to just add on to that, what we have also learned is that in India, almost electronics manufacturing, when we speak about, they speak about high volume lines. That is mainly the machines do the work. So, but what we feel is that India is still considered by the companies in US and Europe for the low volume and high engineering niche technology. So what we feel is that if we can provide R&D incentives to MNC companies to set up in Kerala, would be the right point to start with. Because manufacturing is a decision taken by the sourcing department, but once a design house, if SFO or the startup village ecosystem of Kerala can be an extended arm of R&D, like what we have done for Nissan or any other manufacturing company, that will have a certain urge and to come to a Kerala market for manufacturing. So once that is there, plus these test labs and the manufacturing ecosystem is available, I think it will be a sure bet. And also another point which I would like to state is that we all talk about that our engineers graduating out from colleges need a lot of training. But I think we should go to the next step and understand what is that systems or process followed in South Korea or China, where engineering students or the institutions there make.
Is there
There's some communication issue. I think Mr. Altaf is.
Institutions should work and understand what is that being developed when the team or when the youngsters are growing up. What is the kind of ecosystem that should be provided from the institution days itself? How to bring that up. And another third point, because we don't have much time just to bring it up, the virtual reality and augmented reality is a big step that is happening in India. I think we should do some kind of mechanisms where the industry and the institution can focus on industry for specifically on VR. That would be another edge which we can talk about, saying that Kerala is already 4.0 and we are working on VR would be another element that might interest the companies to look into Kerala. And last but not the least, as Mr. Thomas Abraham mentioned, the components stocking hub in India. Right now, all the electronics components is moving to India for any site is coming through Singapore or Malaysia. With the infrastructure that we have in Kerala, with the airport and with the port, it would be a great idea for the planning department to understand what does it take to create a component stocking policy or an infrastructure for that. So this will be another vital point, and it will, as mentioned by others, it is not that expensive affair for entrepreneurs to step in, but with the right policy, if we can create an ecosystem to stock the components and move out from Kerala to the other parts of India, that will also add onto the ecosystem development, is what we feel and what we are also trying to do. So a few random points which I wanted to mention.
Sure. And Gautam, you have anything to add? Otherwise, Mr. Joy had a point. He was the Chief of Industry Infrastructure in the Planning Board. Gautam?
Yeah, I would like to just add one thing. I think we need to understand the scale at which these companies come in. And I'm specifically trying to address the question of Foxconn going to Chennai. We need to understand the scale at which these companies come in and then have a very targeted approach to with the understanding of that scale. It will not happen unless we have a very clear understanding of the scale, is what I think. So a lot of things need to be put in place, but the scale. And another thing I want to just point out is, I mean, if you look at the number of companies Foxconn operates in China or elsewhere in the world, this one factory is not going to be the last. So there is still opportunity. The question is how targeted we are and how much we understand and appreciate the scale and how much we are willing to do about it.
Fine, Gautam. Dr. Prahlad, any quick comments before I go to Mr. Joy?
Yeah, I would like to share my screen again. So I just pulled out the capabilities for robotics. It's well defined, and then sub areas and capabilities can be mapped. And I'm sorry, this is from my another. Okay, so these are the technology readiness levels. And can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so they're all well defined. It is easy for players to really know where they are standing. And then one aspect is with regard to capabilities or system abilities, the definitions have to be understood and we have to map it properly. But definitely I'll be able to help in that space. And as far as module on subject on innovation enterprise is concerned, it is doable. And I think entrepreneurs should get involved. This should not be a theory-based approach. And we need to move away from the typical examinations and have more continuous assessments. But the kids are generally in education, they are bogged down because of this final examination, preparing for it. Throw away all that and have open book examinations as well as continuous assessments, reduce the pressure on them. They are our resources. How do we make use of them for their benefit and our benefit? That's the way I look at education.
Okay. Joy, sir, your question, please.
From planning board side, I have a question. I'm hearing on this. What are the type of incentives, capital as well as otherwise, that the manufacturing industry expect for setting up units in Kerala? Also, the investment models from the state to make them price and quality competitive in the national and international market.
I'm sorry, that question was not very clear. So probably, can you just repeat?
What are the type of incentives which the manufacturing industry expect from the government for setting up manufacturing units in the state to make them price and quality competitive?
There are two things. One is the capital investment. Probably the other one is the disability factor, which these people spoke about. So anyone wants to take on that question? Krishna sir, you want to take the question? What is the kind of incentives that the industry looks forward to, both in terms of investment and capital quality enhancements?
We can take a poll of the panelists. Top 2 incentives that they think are needed. I would like to hear the answer very much, and so would Secretary, I presume.
Please unmute and then you can answer.
Can you repeat the question?
He was asking, what are the top 2 incentives that you would look forward to from government in terms of investments and also in terms of quality improvements part of it?
So one is that now if you take a EV vehicles space, the government subsidy has to come directly to the customer, not to the manufacturer. The problem when we get subsidy to the manufacturer, reduce that amount from the cost of production and supply to the customer, we have to wait 1 year, 2 years. So that has to be avoided. The subsidy amount has to go directly to the customer. It should not route through manufacturer. Otherwise, our capital will get stuck. Second, regarding the improving the quality, we need assistance because improving the quality is a technology. We have central government institution in Kerala, like CDAC and other institutions, provide the technology what is required for the MSME. So, like in AV space, there are institutions, Trivandrum Engineering College set up a center, provide that technology center to give the, what assistance required for the industry. So if it is made available, our manufacturing cost will come down and we can compete with other industries in outside India also.
Fine, sir. And from SFO side?
Yeah, as mentioned, one would be on the incentive or the capex. Maybe it can be linked to the year-on-year revenue increase, and we should be able to get some kind of incentive subsidy for the capital equipments that we place. Second would be the research and development. The company, if at all, we are coming up with a complete R&D for a product, maybe some kind of mechanisms. We already have a mechanism in government with the state government. An R&D product, research and development, the effort that is spent on the product, maybe we should bring about an mathematics to that link also. And the third would be, as I said, on the alternate energy sources that is available. If an enterprise having this size want to adopt for an solar kind of mechanism, there should be a significant amount of incentive that should be going on because it's going for a very long run haul.
Okay.
So this would be the couple of items which we can improvise as we go forward.
Okay. And just for your information, there are a few comments which are coming up in the chat boxes that people are talking about semiconductor fabs. But then planning board will have to really look at it because it's 70,000 to 1 lakh crores of rupees. I think whether we can afford it or not is another issue. Even specialized fabs would go to a 5,000 crore plus. And even Government of India is now in its third attempt called for a fab UI. And quite a few people are moving on. And Kerala being a state which has got a very costly land and limited resources, it will find it hard for these kind of investments. But like Gautam said, you can look at the fabulous part of it. We can look at the failure analysis part of it. And there are quite a few areas which we can work on. And open source has been the order of the day in Kerala. And so open innovations and open designs is another area where we can really work on. And people are always like the Coconics team suggests that there are a lot of people who are looking at China plus one model. So there are a lot of support which could come through. Overall, thank you for all your inputs, and I would urge planning board and the industry to try and set up a platform where our electronics and hardware companies could meet and share their learnings. I think we don't have a common platform where we can we regularly meet and share our concerns and consolidate our requirements so that the incentivization is targeted. It is not general incentivization which can't be used, but you have very targeted incentives being thrown up which can really be taken up. There's a much larger problem which I'll just highlight, which is probably something to do with internally with government, that it's a very interesting fact that electronics used to be under industries and now it is under electronic IT, and silos of departments have to be broken up. So like you said, EV is under transport or under industries or under electronics. That's 100 questions will come up. So we need cross-departmental functional teams to, if these policies are to get materialized. I think with that point, I will hand it over to Shri Joy and our Chief Industry and Infrastructure Division for vote of thanks, if there are no more questions on this.
No, I have point also.
Sir?
Is there any new investment models which can be suggested by the industry people partnering with the government, similar to Coconics or other models? That would be a welcome suggestion.
I'm sorry, I think that's not loud, clear.
Can I repeat it on behalf of Mr. Joy?
Please, sir.
Do you have specific suggestions on investment models that the state government should promote? And you think that will suit, the trends we have in Kerala. Do you have anything? See, the PPP model, I think, has been suggested for a couple of issues, especially R&D, design, industrial design center. That I think is very important. We have also had specific suggestions on PPP in the testing end of it. That's also, I think, very concrete to be followed up right away. But larger investment models. Should the focus be land? What should we promote? Incentivize, yes, but what's an investment model? Any thoughts, Mr. Gautam? What would be attractive in this regard?
So I think one, capital incentives definitely, but investment model, I don't have a quick answer. I really need to think about it. I just want to say that when I was quickly looking through the IT hardware policy, things like that, and I feel that the segmentation of what we really want to achieve, and then targeting those specific segments, in understanding the investment required in that segment. So targeting those specific segments and creating volume would be what we should do. That's my, very generic thought. Don't have a specific answer to that right away.
We'd be, I think, happy to engage further on this, I think. But Dr. Prahalad, do you have a thought on this?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? Sorry, I missed.
Say, but what kind of investment models should the state promote? Of course, which means defining the role of the incoming, bringing together perhaps funding institutions, the role of the state government itself, what does it guarantee or incentivize, what kind of investment models are,
Yeah. So I was in South Korea some time back. That was in 97, 98. One thing I noticed from them at that time was the government funded 1 million each to a number of companies. And there are some conditions. You can have certain IPs, but the funding came from the government, and the government wants to share those IPs. It can be shared with certain, agreements, a certain way of managing those licensing. And South Korea really advanced a lot to a large extent in robotics, because I worked in my process lab and the robotics company came out of my lab at that time. So the government can push in monies to private companies. We have a wrong notion that private and public are two extremes, and private is always, the bad guy or the good guy. So why do we need to have these differences? I would like to say we're all from the same country, the same resources, and whether it is public or private, we should be able to facilitate. So the government can have a pool of IPs and it can be shared. That is one model. Another model in Singapore, we have national research laboratories, and what they have gone to the extent of doing. They send a scientist from the national laboratories to a private company to enhance that company's capability in certain spaces. And there was money also given. And so we can really look at it from various angles. There are various models available. And in Singapore, even I have scholarships, which is completely paid by the university through the government. And I can use that for industry postgraduate programs for industries, to attract industries. So because the industries are, not all industries are capable of really transcending the industry 4.2. Everybody is struggling. So how to really have an inborn capability and talent, and how do you make use of the money from government, the university research capabilities, industries capabilities together? So that is a very interesting way of looking at it. So I look at it from a larger context rather than money being pumped in.
And Jayaraman sir, I think much of it comes under the ITA. So you can't give direct subsidies on specific areas, like unless it is That is one of the reasons why probably directly transferring subsidies to companies will become a problem. I think that is one small caution in that.
Because of global trade issues, you're saying.
Trade issues, yes. I think you can't give a direct subsidy on that. I think we have fairly long.
I would just like to intervene very briefly in the context of something that Dr. Prahlad brought up about the relationship between public and private. I think I can quite confidently assure this audience and those who will see our recorded proceedings that the government of Kerala, this government, and I believe there is a general consensus in Kerala society that we are keen to attract investment. In the February 1st to 3rd conference on the 3rd, the Chief Minister in person will be holding a session with some of the leading industrialists from across the country, where wealth creation, value addition, employment, livelihoods, and a social future has to be assured. We are in a situation where the role of the private sector is welcome. Of course, there is a regulation and laws and rules and taxes and, all the paraphernalia of government is there. But are we keen on attracting investment for value addition, wealth creation, knowledge generation, and improving incomes and livelihoods? We underline that our answer is yes. So I think please engage with this. Engage with us without any kind of hesitation on this score. And I think I speak for the government and the planning board on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Joyce,
Thank you.
Move forward on the schedule, yeah. So for yours.
Am I audible?
You're audible. You're audible. Please go
on. Then come to the respected speakers, delegates, officials, participants, and dear friends. I feel honored to propose vote of thanks for the thematic session on IT hardware on behalf of State Planning Board. And it is as part of the international conference, Kerala looks ahead, scheduled on February 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, 2021. This session has brought in new ideas, thoughts, and suggestions, which can be brainstormed in the main session on February 2nd, 2021. Recognizing the important role of IT sector as a key element of Kerala's growth. On behalf of State Planning Board, I convey our sincere thanks to the esteemed speakers of this session, Professor Prahlad Vadakepad, National University of Singapore, Mr. Christo Job, CMD, Icon India, Mr. Altaf Jahangir, CEO and Executive Director, Nest Sophos Technologies, Mr. Gautam Shankar, Vice President Operations, India and Japan, Inbound Electronics, as well as Mr. Thomas Verghese, who spoke on behalf of Mr. Jahangir. Those who have taken their time in highlighting the importance of hardware in the IT sector and bringing up new ideas and knowledge to us. Also, I sincerely acknowledge the efforts taken by Dr. Sanjeev Gopinath, Vice Chancellor, Digital University, for presenting the thematic concept, and Dr. Jayashankar, MD, KSITL, for his key role as the moderator. Also, I thank on behalf of Planning Board, Sri Mohammed White Safrullah IAS, Additional Secretary, Electronics and IT Department, for his opening remarks, and Dr. Jayaraman, Member, Planning Board, for his welcome address, as well as taking the lead role in this session. Again, I take this opportunity to thank all delegates, invitees, attendees who have joined the session via Zoom and social media platforms. I would like to thank the organizing team at Planning Board, IT service providers, event management team, all colleagues and Sri Varun, anchor for this session, for their cooperation and support. Thank you all once again for the enriching session with your valuable questions and inputs. And we look forward to meet you again on the May 90 session scheduled on February 2nd, 2021 from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So that brings us to the end of today's session. Thank you all for joining us in the thematic session on hardware organized by Kerala State Planning Board as a part of the International Conference and Consultation Kerala Looks Ahead. We look forward to seeing you on the 1st of February for the formal inauguration of the International Conference and Consultation, and also on 2nd of February for the session dealing on IT as a whole. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.